Good evening everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar on helping your child start their career journey. I'd like to thank everyone for joining tonight, and hopefully you can get a whole lot out of tonight. My name's Danielle Buckley and I'm the coaching and consulting psychologist for Skillsroad, and tonight's webinar is all about how you can use Skillsroad to help your child start their career journey. What we're going to cover in the next 60 minutes, is helping your child prepare for their career journey. I'm going to look at helping your child through the career quiz, which we have on Skillsroad. We're going to look at identifying strengths and weaknesses, applying for roles and preparing for interviews. We're going to look at using a resume builder, jobs board, and finally we're going to look at becoming work ready and job fit. So in particular, looking at how you can help your young person build relationships at work, build a personal brand, and focus on developing their mental toughness and resilience. So as I said, my name is Danielle, and I'm going to take you through this tonight for the next hour or so. For those of you that haven't joined one of our webinars before, we really like to keep these as interactive as possible. And what you'll see down on your left-hand side of the screen is a little chat box. So there's going to be times throughout the webinar where I'm going to invite you to ask questions. And whatever I talk about, anything that comes up, please don't hesitate to type us a question. We've got a team of Skillsroad members here all ready and waiting to answer your questions. Nobody else can see your questions, by the way, so they're all private. They come to us. We won't call your name out when we read the question, but we will share the question with the group. There's also going to be times throughout the webinar where I'm going to ask you to fill out a poll, because we really do want to hear what you have to say. So we'll start off with a poll at the moment. So the first poll question that I'm going to ask you, thinking about yourself as a parent and working with your child and getting them to think about their career, what are some of the challenges that you face when it comes to talking with your children about building their careers?
Okay, Danielle, it's Amanda here. We've got 66% saying not knowing enough, 33% saying not knowing how to approach it.
Okay, excellent. So, you know, based on our experience in the past, most parents tell us that they don't think that they know enough. And it's really interesting because when we look at the research over the last couple of years, for those of you that don't know, we've been working throughout Australia, talking to parents, talking to students, talking to employers, trying to help develop children into the transition into the workplace. Most young people are telling us, anecdotally and through surveys, that the person that they turn to most in advice for their career is their parent. So most parents tell us that they don't know enough, which is good, and that's why we're here tonight, to try and build up your bank of knowledge. But a question for you, and an open question, so type your response in your chat box. But why do you think it's important for your child to start thinking about building a career? Why do you think it's important to talk to your child about building a career? Any questions, any thoughts on that? Come on people, be brave. Why do you think it's important? Type me a response. Okay, thank you for all the brave people participating. Yeah, so careers today require qualifications is what one person has written. And there's actually a number of careers now. And so far all the responses coming through thick and fast are spot on. What we're really starting to see in the workplace today is a lack of unskilled jobs and young people needing to think about their career because they actually need to think about the skill that they're going to develop. That's why we've got Skillsroad. So Skillsroad is your one-stop shop for all your children's career needs. And the website has everything that you need to know to help you help your child. And today specifically we're going to be focusing on helping you help your child in the preparation of their career journey. So starting all those initial questions around what are they interested in, what career do they want to have, And then preparing them for interviews using resumes, cover letters, we'll cover all of that. And then finally becoming work ready and job fit. And this is a really big point for young people at the moment. And we'll go through some of the stereotypical traits of Gen Y and why they're different to other generations. But what employers are telling us, and even what young people today are telling us, is that they're finding work really challenging and employers are finding young people really difficult to work with. So we've got to try and work out how we can bridge that gap. And that's what Skillsroad is here to do. So another poll, I'm interested to know, out of all the people on the call tonight, who has already logged on and signed up to Skillsroad?
Okay, Danielle, we have 50% of people saying yes, they have, and 50% saying no.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad to see that some people have signed up to Skillsroad. That is fantastic. And at the risk of sounding like a bossy teacher, for those people who haven't signed up to Skillsroad, I'd really encourage you to do it. It's completely free. And once you register, you can access all the tools free of charge. As I said before, parents are usually the main source of information when children are exploring their career options. And this means it's really important that you know as much as you can. I want to give you some background here, and this research comes from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, but we know we've got about 3.1 million Australians aged between 15 and 24. 500,000 of them are not in full or part-time work or study. We also know that commencements of apprenticeships for under 19s are now at their lowest level since 2001, dropping from about 120,000 to under 90,000. We also know that 194,000 young people are disengaged from the system entirely, and for every worker who is younger than 25, there's 2.6 workers that are over 45 years old. So we need to engage young people in the workforce to sustain our economic growth. And 1 in 6 young people at the moment will not get the start that they need to contribute to their future and the future of Australia. Now, if that's not scary for parents, and as a parent of 2 children myself, I'm not quite sure what is. And it's a really good motivator to get us to start really encouraging our children to think about their careers and think about what they want to do once they leave school and what sort of career journey they want to go on. So parents often say to me, how do I start this conversation? And a really good place to start this conversation around what sort of career do you want to have is about saying, what sort of life do you want to have? And let me tell you a story about a young apprentice that I worked with a number of years ago. He was a plumber and he did his first 7 months of his plumbing apprenticeship and absolutely hated it. Bit of background to this story is this plumber, apprentice plumber, actually came from a family of plumbing. So he'd grown up on job sites, his uncle was a plumber, his grandfather was a plumber, everybody had plumbing businesses. Yet for some reason when he started working as an apprentice plumber, he got the shock of his life. So we sit down with him one day and I said, all right mate, well, you know, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And he says, I want to be a snowboarder. I said, well, what do you mean you want to be a snowboarder? He said, well, I want to have 3 months of the year off. I want to have a nice car I can drive to the snow. I want to snowboard down at Thredbo, down at Perisher, and then I want to go to Japan once a year. I said, okay, right. So we've got a bit of thinking and planning to do. I said to him, well, if you want to do that, how much money do you think you're going to need to earn in order to have a lifestyle to afford snowboards? A safe car you can drive down, overseas holidays, skiing down in the snow, lift tickets, all of that sort of thing. And we sat down and we worked out the sums. And I said to him, and what sort of money do you think you're going to earn throughout your apprenticeship each year, going higher, and we worked it out. And I said, and how much do you think you're going to earn if you're unskilled for the rest of your life? And he sort of went, oh, right. And a really good way to sit down with your kids and to start thinking about their career journey is to map out and talk to them about the difference between a career and a job. Now, I certainly don't want to make the focus on money here or financial positions, and in fact a lot of our research says that pay is one of the smallest things that impact our Gen Y's choice in career, which I think is fantastic. But when it comes to getting them through the door and understanding that they need to have a skill and that skills matter as part of their career journey, I've shown a lot of young people this map. And this shows that, you know, while it's really tempting for a first-year apprentice who's 18 years old to go and work as a subcontractor somewhere or go work in the mines and earn $800 a week, as opposed to $300 if you're an apprenticeship, and obviously these are just all average figures. Down the track, when you're a tradie and you're working for yourself and you've got a family and you've got to support them, you know, that figure isn't quite as much as it is if you have a skilled profession. So this has been a really motivating tool to show a lot of young people, to get them to start thinking about their career journey. And I say career journey because, again, we're not talking here about roles. And in fact, a lot of the research shows that, you know, young people move roles really quickly and they move industries, and over their lifetime they'll have a lot of different jobs. But in saying that, we're trying to encourage students to think about a journey and think about what skills they can start to develop and where they can go after school. So some of the questions that you can ask your child are, what are their interests? What do they enjoy doing? What do they know about the workforce? Again, research shows that we are our happiest at work when we are doing things that we like and that we enjoy. And one of the things that we've been speaking to parents and to employees about is when they're interviewing young people, asking the question, what are you interested in? What do you like? What do you enjoy? Because the employer knows that if somebody likes using their hands and they have to do that in their job, then they're more likely to be successful. If somebody likes working on their own and the employer asks that, then they're more likely to be successful. I want you to also talk to your kids about what sort of roles or industries have they been exposed to. You know, I remember when I grew up and both my parents were teachers and didn't have a lot of experience in different areas. But they went and spoke to all of their friends who worked in different industries and asked if I could go along for a day or two. Obviously, everyone loves an office girl who's willing to go and post the letters and make tea and coffee for people. But that exposure gave me a whole lot of opportunities to see what different environments were like. Another question to ask is, does your child have all the information they need to start thinking about their career journey? Because as somebody pointed out earlier, there are so many choices now for kids. And in fact, it's the choice that a lot of people are finding really overwhelming. And so what we'll talk about tonight is how you can use Skillsroad to gather as much information as you can and use it as a really good resource for you. I'm going to turn to the audience now and ask if anybody has a question so far. Please type away if you do. If you don't have a question, we'll move on to our next poll, and you've got a second to type, so don't worry. But the next poll is, who thinks that they have got all of these questions covered? So in terms of knowing all of these answers about what their children want, what do people think?
Again, Danielle, we're 50-50 on this one.
Very good, very good. Very good. So lots of parents are good at asking questions, and I think probably based on my experience, sometimes a lot of parents say they don't know the questions to ask. So hopefully some of these questions will inform parents' view. And we've got a few questions coming through, really good questions come through. If students aren't engaged in education, it limits their opportunities. That's a really good point. And I've had a lot of parents talk to me about that over the years and the time that we've been doing this. And like all human motivation, we only do things if we think it is in our best interest to do so. So if a parent takes an approach where they're telling their child they have to get off their bottom and do something, it's really unlikely that that child's going to engage. If a parent, and this is a really hard job, but if a parent can help somebody realise the benefits of engaging in a career journey, the benefits of having something fulfilling and interesting and enjoyable to do every day, they are more likely to take it upon themselves and start getting involved in the journey. And that's why asking questions around what are your interests and what do you enjoy doing are so important. You know, the old saying goes, if we do what we love, we never work a day in our life. We really want to encourage young people to find what it is they love and turn it into a career. There are so many options now for traineeships, for apprenticeships, for university degrees that can be anything that young people are interested in. So really, that's the first part I want you to do, and then I want you to start the process of exploring. Okay, so moving on, question for you. First thing that we're going to cover on Skillsroad is probably our most popular tool. So when it comes to preparing your kids for their career journey, the first thing I want to introduce you to is the Skillsroad Career Quiz. What the career quiz does is it's about a 25-minute free quiz for students to do, and it's all about understanding each individual's motivational and personality style, and then using this to help identify different types of careers that might suit them. So we all know that we are motivated by different things. So for example, drivers are motivated by results, and carers are motivated by people and relationships, and analysts are motivated by logic and detail and strategy, and we've got flexes that are a combination of all of them. But what we also know is that each different personality style and motivational style are suited to different roles. So if kids are really, really stuck, the best thing that they can start to do is get online, do the career quiz as a starting point to spit out a whole lot of careers that might possibly suit their style. So they'll find out a bit about their style, and they'll find out a bit about jobs and roles and career paths that are available to them based on the information that they've provided. So can I ask, who has completed the career quiz so far?
We've got 75% of people that have said no, they haven't completed the quiz, and 25% said yes.
Fantastic. Well, for all those people that have completed it, well done, and I'd love to hear what you think. For all of those people that haven't, I would really encourage you to get online and do it. And look, this isn't just designed purely for your children. Do it yourself and open up that conversation. It is a fantastic conversation to have at home. Not only what your child does and what your child's possible careers are available, but also what's your type, and talk about it. And the more you start this conversation, the easier it is it's going to be to start exploring their career journey. So I'm curious now, a little bit of a pit stop here, but who has children that currently work? I'd like to know, who has children that currently work? Okay, so we've got most people say no.
Yeah, we've got 66% saying no and 33% saying yes.
Fantastic. Okay, wonderful. And it's really interesting because there's been quite a strong trend lately that we're seeing, and teachers are reporting back to us too, that a number of children are not getting part-time jobs. And I'm not sure how old everyone's children are on the call, but a lot of students are not having part-time jobs. And this is really impacting when they start their career journey, because they're not only having to learn about their job, but they're having to learn how to work. And that's one of the challenges that employers are telling us that they're finding. So one of the points I'd like to make before we go into applying for roles and preparing for interviews, that if your child doesn't currently work, I would really encourage you to get them out into the workforce. And I'm sure most parents probably are doing that already, and I hear from a lot of parents that getting part-time work is incredibly difficult. But if they don't work yet, really try and get them in, whether it's paid or unpaid or work experience. Employers are really looking favourably on anything that kids are doing to get experience in the workforce. So the first thing we'll talk about now in terms of applying for roles and preparing for interviews is how kids can put together a resume, how they can start looking for work, and then how they can start preparing for interviews. So again, on the Skillsroad website, we have a tool called the Resume Builder. So the Resume Builder is a fantastic tool. Again, once you're a free member, this is a free tool. And it allows kids to go on there and create a resume. So what they'll have to do is they'll enter their education, they'll enter their skills, they'll enter a bit about them, some work history, any awards and certificates, interests or hobbies, and it will also ask for some referees. So these referees can be personal referees or teachers or anyone that you might know in the family that's happy to vouch for them, or current work employers or managers, whatever age they are, and get them to fill it out, and step by step it will take them through a really simple process to create a resume. Now obviously every employer is going to ask students for a resume, and a lot of parents ask questions like, well, what if they haven't worked before? As I said, most important thing for any young person today is to get work experience. If you haven't had work experience, even they can even put jobs around the house down. But the point of this is that they can show initiative. They can show to employers that they're willing to get their hands dirty and they're willing to do whatever it takes. The other thing I've had people ask is, what if they've only had one job? Well, I'm going to say that that's okay, because there's also plenty of opportunities for kids to get out and volunteer. So whether they can seek out work experience with parents or friends like I mentioned before, whatever it is, any opportunity they can to demonstrate that they have skills that are useful in the workplace are really, really important. Polling question now. Has anybody used the resume builder yet with their child?
We're 50-50 on this again. Oops, no, we're up to 75% no and 25% yes.
Fantastic, excellent. So look, if you haven't used it, and so many young people don't know how to create their resume. I mean, so many adults don't know how to create a really good resume, and this does it all for you. So I'd really encourage you to get online and start filling it out. On top of that, so what employers are telling us that they want, and what we know, is that on top of a resume, employers want a cover letter. So we have a standard, students need to have a standard resume, and then they need to have a cover letter that's specific to each job that they are applying for. One of the main points on the cover letter is that the employer needs to know that the student knows about their company and their business and the role before applying for a job. So what to write on a cover letter? There's a whole other section on the Skillsroad website next to the resume builder that'll teach students how to write cover letters. When we've done this workshop with career guidance counsellors, part of what they're trying to do is get kids to start practicing writing cover letters during their schooling, during their sessions with their teachers. But as parents, I want you to try and get your kids to write cover letters too. So cover letters demonstrate that they know about the company. The other thing that they demonstrate is whether your child can write and spell. They show the level of interest. They also address why that person should get the role. So one of the things I get everyone to do is each role has a selection criteria. In the selection criteria, it has a number of points that they're looking for in that role. In your cover letter, you would say something like, dear so-and-so, thank you for the opportunity to apply for this job. I have met the following criteria by, and you list all the experience that they've got, and then you would attach their resume as well, because employers want to see that they've put in the effort.
We've got a question here, Danielle. Can adults also use the resume builder and cover letter templates?
Yes, fantastic. So try before you buy. If you want to do it for yourself, absolutely have a go. It's not just for students. Anyone can use this, but please get on, have a go, and practice doing it. I mean, practice makes perfect. And it's really interesting because we've been doing a lot of these, we've been doing webinars, but also seminars throughout Australia. And a huge disconnect that I've noticed is that children have very little understanding of what their parents do if their parents work. They have very little understanding of what process the parents went for in applying for jobs, what days are like with their parents. And I'm not sure if it is as parents that all of a sudden we get home and we protect our child from the world that we have, crazy world of work. But it's causing a bit of a rift because kids aren't understanding that work is really hard. They're not understanding that interview processes can be really difficult. They're often not understanding what is involved in getting a job and going through the whole working process. So I would encourage parents to get on, create their own resume, show the kids how to do it, and even have a go at creating a cover letter with them. Certainly don't do it for them, but guide them through the process. And as you can see on your screen here, don't do this. I received this cover letter recently. Dear Sir or Madam, and filling out a whole lot of information that had nothing to do with the job I had on offer. And this happens all the time for myself and for so many employers. So creating a cover letter is really, really important. Anyone have any questions? That was a great question, by the way. Thank you. I've got some people here saying that their kids work at some part-time jobs at places like Big W, McDonald's, KFC. Any opportunity to work in those sort of places is absolutely fantastic. You know, and when we speak to employers, they always say that they look for kids who have that sort of experience. It's customer service, it's teamwork, you know, it's leadership. There's so many great skills they can learn in any kind of part-time role like that. So really, if you can get your kids out there, do it. Okay, so once they've started thinking about their resume, they've put together a cover letter for any specific jobs that come up. It's important to let you know that based on our research, most Gen Ys actually find work through personal networks. So get your children talking to your networks, get them talking to your friends, and identify some people that they could possibly be interested in similar work that they do. And as I said, get them out doing work experience. Look for any part-time work where they will gain any skills to be work ready. Take them to your work if you can for a day. Get them to see what it's like. The more that they can know about the workforce before they start work, the better. So a question to the parents out there, another poll. If your child has found work, where do they find it?
The overwhelming response here is through personal networks and the internet.
Wonderful, excellent, yeah. And look, that's been our experience so far. We've had most people say personal networks, but here we seem to have a bit of a split. So, you know, if your kids are looking for a job, get talking. Get talking is the best advice that I can give you at the moment. Followed by the internet, which is our new jobs board. So once you've spoken to your friends and your kids have their resume together, they've got a bit of an idea about what they might want to do. They've done the career quiz, they've got a few options. On the Skillsroad website now, we've got our very own jobs board. And this advertises apprenticeships and traineeships and a whole range of jobs, particularly aimed at Gen Ys, but again for anyone. So get the kids to come on here, have a play. People often say they don't know where to look for jobs, and here on Skillsroad, if you are a member, this is your very own website here, advertising specific jobs. Any questions so far? Okay, so if they do have a job, they're going to have to go for an interview. Again, based on our research, we found that most interviews for Gen Ys only go for 30 minutes and they only meet one member of staff. So that's not a lot of time for your child to make a really positive impression, and it's not a lot of time for your child to work out whether they actually want the job with that employer. So in preparing for interviews, we want to help them get to know themselves. You know, talk to them about what their interests are, what they enjoy doing, why they want the job. Typical interview questions that we get from employers, young people get from employers are, why do you want that job? So as a parent, prep for this. Spend time talking through these interview questions with your child and practice being the employer. Ask them, what do you think that they're going to bring to the role? Ask them, what do you think your parents will think of you taking the job? And believe it or not, some of you might have a bit of a chuckle here, but our research shows that if parents or support people are supportive of the job, young people are more likely to stay. Again, employees are likely to ask, why do you want to work for this business or company? So get your child to do some research on that company. Find out the work that they've been doing. If they're applying for a building job or an apprenticeship with a builder, research the different houses that they've been working on or where they've been doing, and impress the employer by showing that you have knowledge of that company. Typically, employees are also going to ask how they're going to get to and from work and whether they have a car. So again, we know that most young people, if it's difficult for them to get to and from work, they will leave within the first 12 months. So these are all things that they need to know and have answers planned for when it comes to having an interview with an employer. So as I said, practice asking your child these questions. Tape them so they can hear how they sound. Once they've done their resume and they've possibly done a cover letter, practice using their resume to ask some questions. You know, lots of employers will hold a child's resume and say things like, tell me about the part-time job at McDonald's that you have. Tell me when you went on this leadership program, what was it like? And then talk to them about the interviews that they've had. Every single person gets nervous at interviews, but the more that you can prepare them and the more that you can make it a really normal process where your child's actually selling themselves as well as interviewing the employer, the better opportunity they'll have to get the job. We've got a question coming through. Amanda.
Yes, we've got somebody asking here, are there any questions on Skillsroad to help prepare their child for an interview?
Yes, there are some questions. So excellent point. We've put a whole lot of questions on there, and there's so many resources for parents on there. There's guides for helping your child prepare for interviews. There's guides to coaching and mentoring your child through the beginning of work. There's a whole lot of tip sheets for parents. So log on, print them off, and please use them. Skillsroad has been designed for your use. It's a community initiative, so please let us know any other resources that you might need, but everything on there is designed for you to use and it's free of charge. So please log on and have a play with our tools. Any other questions before we move on? I think we're all good. Okay, so I've got you to start thinking about doing the career quiz with your kids. We'll talk to you about how they can go away, build a resume, then how the importance of creating a cover letter, where they can look for jobs, and then once they start thinking about work, they've possibly got some interviews coming up, they might have got the job, it's time that they start thinking about how they become work ready and job fit. And in particular, it's about building relationships at work, building their personal brand, and demonstrating mental toughness and resilience. So most apprentices or trainees quit their job because of bad relationships with their co-workers. And you will probably not be surprised to know that that does not stay just with young people, but most people leave their jobs because of the people that they work with. So building good relationships with co-workers is one of the most important success factors of working. And many individuals really struggle to work across generations. So again, throughout Australia, we've been running for the last 5 years seminars for employers and for young people, helping employers particularly in how they can work with Gen Ys and helping Gen Ys work with older generations. But I'm curious to know how many parents have spent time coaching their children around building relationships at work? Is this something that you've had to do or not?
Once again, we've got a fairly even split here between yes and no.
Fantastic. Yeah, great. Excellent. And what a lot of parents have been saying to us, one is a lot of their kids are having trouble in building relationships, but they don't know what to say about it, how to do it. So hopefully we can talk a bit about that now. So I just want to draw your attention to some Gen Y stereotypes, and hopefully as parents this might give you a bit of a laugh, but I just want to preference this by saying this is these are stereotypical traits. Not all Gen Ys are like this. But what we see in our Gen Y population is that they're always connected. So we see that they're never genuinely without their mobile phones. We see this ability to multitask, so being on the phone, watching TV, surfing the net all at once. We see with Gen Ys that they like to express individuality but feel it's important to be part of a group. So this can often result in them being outspoken but also really optimistic. A lot of employers tell us this, and unfortunately it's probably one of the defining characteristics of this population. But we see an inability to take harsh criticism in a lot of our Gen Ys. We know that most still live at home, but they have grown up in really affluent times, and as a result of that, they're hungry to progress their careers, but perhaps lack a bit of resilience and mental toughness, because for a lot of our Gen Ys, compared to other generations, life hasn't really been that tough for them yet. What do we think, parents? Do we agree? Type in your box. Yes if you agree, no if you don't. Or if there's anything I've missed out, please let me know. Lots of people coming through with agrees.
Lots of agreement there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's expand. So we've got a bit about our Gen Ys. Let's share a bit about our Gen Xs too. So our Gen Xs, the generation before Gen Ys, are generally born between 61 and 81. And look, all of these boundaries are grey and fuzzy, and it's about where you feel you identify with and where you think your children identify with. Gen Xs really have this strong value around being an individual, but they're also driven by promotion, money and financial security. We see that amongst most Gen Xs had part-time jobs whilst at school. You know, the 14 and 9 months kicked out the door to go and start working. Most started their skilled work without technology. Most have a mortgage. And for a Gen X, cool is about having the right attitude, where we know with a Gen Y, cool is probably more about having the right look. Do we agree with the Gen Xs? Good to see. Okay, and baby boomers. So our baby boomers are typically born between 46 and 61. With our baby boomers, we've seen that almost all of them have worked from a young age. So they rely on friends more for information. They're less reliant on technology for basic information. So while most baby boomers now have computers, they probably still use them differently. So while we might see a Gen Y reading the paper on a computer, we're probably more likely to see a baby boomer read a hard copy of a paper. Social standing is important typically to baby boomers. Again, you know, these are just stereotypical traits. We often see a value of loyalty and a belief that a job is for life. So thinking about those three descriptions, it's really easy to see how if we forget personality, if we put these three different generations in the workplace. So typically we've got a Gen Y who, you know, might be in their early 20s starting work and has very little work experience, who has entered the workforce with attitudes, workplace attitudes, that things that are important to them are work-life balance and progression and opportunities to develop themselves, compared to baby boomers and Gen Xers who have worked from a young age, who think that it's all about hard work and think you only get work-life balance after you've been at work for 15 years. Really, we're going to see a clash in the workplace. We've had a great question come through here. Are most employers baby boomers or Gen X? We've got a real mix. But amongst the trade industry, I'm certainly seeing a lot of company owners as baby boomers and perhaps direct managers as Gen Xers. That answers people's question. So look, I just wanted to give you that overview because as you can see, each generation is really different and each generation is really different for a number of reasons. The environmental factors that have influenced them, things that were happening in the world, and their view of work and what work means to them. Baby boomers worked for a means to an end. They started work early and you worked for a paycheck. You finished work on time and you went home and you had your family time. We've got a lot of Gen Ys now who are starting work and they're being encouraged to work in something that is meaningful, that they're passionate about. They don't want to go home from work and keep working like the Gen Xers probably do, who are addicted to working really hard. Not saying that the other people aren't, but there's really different views about work. And that leads to a clash in the workplace. So how can you help your child build relationships at work? Well, when we speak to employees and we speak to parents and even when we speak to young people, a really interesting word that keeps coming up about building relationships is that of respect. So a lot of baby boomers and Gen Xers feel as though respect is something that you earn, whereas a lot of Gen Ys feel as though everybody has an equal level of respect, and that happens on day one. So some really simple things you can get your child to do. You know, on time is 5 minutes early. So really making sure that they're always there 5 minutes early. Building relationships can be really simple by showing gratitude, by saying hello to everyone at work and saying thank you. You know, again, there's a lot of research about success in small, medium and large size businesses, and it all comes back to how grateful we are and how kind and nice we are to the people that we work with. Really simple things as well, work hygiene factors. So educating your young person that if they can't come to work, call ahead and explain why. What employers constantly tell us is that kids don't turn up, they'll send a text message, or they, will tell somebody to tell someone, or they'll get their parent to ring up and say that they're not coming. We need young people to show responsibility and accountability in the workforce. So respect for many employees is earned. There's a whole notion now and a whole lot of research around teaching kids to be curious. So if they don't know something, work is a really scary place sometimes. If they don't know something, ask. Be really brave. If they don't understand how something works, ask. Be resilient. So negative feedback is a development opportunity, and we see in so many stereotypical traits that Gen Ys have an inability to take harsh criticism. And, there's a lot of hypotheses as to why that is. But having regular conversations about what feedback they got, separating themselves from the role that they're doing is really important in helping them develop a resilient mindset. And just simply being nice to people and working hard. And really interestingly, we carried out some research with a Gen Y population on Skillsroad. So we put out a survey to our Gen Y members to ask them what they found to be the most difficult part of work. And their response was the hours and demands of the job. And a lot of the reasons for that is because they don't have very much work experience. But by building really good relationships and communicating with how they feel, things that they're struggling with, asking for help, is a really good way of coping with those pressures and those demands. Again, we've had so many young people tell us that they go to work and they're silent because they're too embarrassed to ask a question or they don't know how to do it. And we've had lots of employers think that young people are obnoxious and rude because they don't ask questions. So helping build relationships is really, really important, something you can do as a parent. Following on from that is thinking about their personal brand. So we don't like to think that appearance matters, but at the end of the day it does. So, talking to your child about what their brand is, and that means the way that they look, the way that they act, the way they answer questions, the way they solve problems, what they put on Facebook, Instagram, and how they use their phone. So I can tell you now, every single employer is going to check their Facebook page and their Instagram page. So if they've got anything on there that they don't want a parent or an employee to see, I suggest that they take it off. Finally, we'll talk about mental toughness and resilience. So again, many young people leave their jobs because they don't have the resilience and mental toughness that they require to survive in the workplace. And mental toughness and resilience is a really interesting point because it's not something that's absolute. So it's not something that we either have or we don't. So mental toughness is really, it's about the ability to cope with stressful events in life, and resilience is how you bounce back from those. There was a really famous study done once from Illinois Bell Telephone Company where the company went through a restructure over a period of years. 2/3 of the company absolutely floundered. They had things from heart disease, depression, bad performance at work, yet 1/3 of the company flourished. And when the researchers tried to understand what the difference was, the key difference was whether people were resilient or not. So whether when something did go wrong, they could bounce back and keep going, or whether when something went wrong, they fell to pieces and didn't think they could do it. And I'm telling you this because resilience is such an essential tool in life. So it's important that you talk to your children about work being really hard. Manage their expectations early on. They're going to have really hard days. And it's been interesting for a lot of the young people we've spoken to, particularly going into small businesses. You put yourself in the shoes of the business owner. So, that one business might be supporting a family, might be supporting children through school. So every decision that a young person makes is not only, a matter of what the customers see or what goes on in the job site, but could potentially impact what that man does with his family. So really trying to broaden your child's knowledge about work is so essential. Share your own experiences and talk to them about yourself having a tough day. So again, we've got this, we seem to have with a lot of our Gen Ys, this mask that, parents' life is easy and parents' work is easy, so my work is easy. But the more parents can talk about work being really hard and how they get through those examples is going to help build mental toughness and resilience. We've been fortunate enough at Skillsroad to do a lot of work with the NRL, and Nathan Califf came and did a talk for us. and he spoke to a group of students, and I've captured this quote because I think it's something that every student needs to hear. He said, "I was told 1% of you will make it. So I decided to be first to training every week, train a little longer than everyone and work a little harder. I was going to be resilient. I was never going to let someone tell me I couldn't. After a bad day, I promised myself I would always get back up." And it's really important that we know that we're going to have bad days, that our kids are going to have bad days. But in order to start our career journey and sustain our career journey, our kids need to be mentally tough and resilient. And as parents, we need to be mentally tough and resilient because they are going to have really bad days. And what we don't want parents to do is go in and say, "Oh, we'll just quit," because it's likely that they're going to experience the same things in a different job. Does anyone have any questions at the moment? We're almost finished for tonight, but I'm curious to hear what you might think. Any questions on building relationships or mental toughness at work? Well, good. Okay, so following on from what we've covered so far, we talked about getting your kids online to Skillsroad, getting yourself logged on, and starting to go through the tools, so starting to use the career quiz. Getting your kids and perhaps even yourself to get on there and build your resume and use the information on there also to build a cover letter for the jobs that kids might be applying for. Following the cover letter, use your personal networks, use the jobs board and start looking for work. Start thinking about your career journey, what options are available to you. There's also a whole lot of other sections on Skillsroad where if the kids are thinking about different pathways, different apprenticeships, different university degrees, they can literally go through and explore a whole host of careers and understand what that journey is, what sort of pay they're going to get, what sort of things that they'll do day to day. But I would encourage parents to get on there and play around with the tools, and it's the playing around with the tools where you'll start to really understand as much as you can. You seem to have some questions, Amanda?
We do. We've got a couple here from Sharon. The first one is, how important is it for young people to have a clear direction about careers whilst doing their HSC?
Yeah, that's a really good question. My response to that would be, I would be thinking that when they're that age, that it would be really useful to know what they're interested in and the type of journey they might like to have. So are they thinking that they might want to do an apprenticeship? Are they thinking that they might want to go to uni? And if they do want to do either of those things, what sort of industries or areas suit them? Do I think it's important that they know a type of job that they want to have after school? Not necessarily. You know, and that's what Skillsroad is really about, encouraging kids to think about the beginning of their journey because their journey is going to change over time. What matters is starting to think about how they'll start that journey and how they'll get a foot in the door somewhere. Any other questions?
Great. Yes, there's one more. Can your child's career personality change over time?
Yeah, really, really interesting and a lifelong debate in psychology. But basically what psychologists say is our key motivational style doesn't change. And I mean, if you imagine the typical scenario of a buoy floating above the ocean but tied to an anchor deep down below, the anchor remains pretty consistent over time, but what we see is a floating around the surface of the anchor where behaviours, things, interests change, but really at the core we're kind of similar, kind of stay the same. Thanks for all the questions. If anyone's got anything else, please type in, and I hope that answers the people's questions that have come through. So before we depart, I just want people to start thinking about how they're going to go away and help their child choose their career journey. I really want you to start thinking about what is your child's personality, and that's going to be really great information for you in the way you parent your child as well. Get them to use a resume builder to create the perfect resume. Just get them to start. And if they notice any gaps, it's again really good diagnostic information to work out what they need to go and do to fill those gaps. Practice interviewing them, you know, practice reading them questions, and I imagine you'll get a few laughs, but be brave and do it. A lot of kids and parents have laughed when I've told them to do that, but really, it's just so important. Help them get a foot in the door anywhere. Any person you know that currently works and is willing to take someone on for a day, for a week, to just see what the environment's like and help out, get them going, get a foot in the door, get them to start thinking about what industries, what roles, what journeys might suit them. Then if they do get a foot in the door, talk to them about what it's like. Talk to them about the importance of building relationships, about talking to other people, and coach them through the realities of work. On the website, we also have a parents portal, and I mentioned this before, but we have regular tips, regular updates, we have blog articles, we have guides for coaching and mentoring, we have so many things all designed for parents to help with their career for their career journey. We have only been able to give you a very brief overview of a very small selection of things we have designed for parents. So please get on Skillsroad, it's all free. Have a play, use it, and see what is most relevant to you and your child when it comes to thinking about their career journey. Just before we finish up, I'd like to know what you might go away and do. So do you think you're going to go away and sign up to Skillsroad? Do you think you'll use a career quiz? Do you think you'll get online and do the resume builder with your kids? Do you think you'll just get on there and explore the careers? As I said, there's industry videos, there's descriptions of every career that you can possibly imagine. We've also got a jobs board. Will you get on there and use that? Look for jobs. Will you use a parents portal, or does it all sound pretty good and you're going to have a play and use everything that's on there?
We've got a range of answers here, Danielle, but good to see that there's about half the audience saying everything. Which is great, and quite a few suggesting that they will get onto the career quiz.
Fantastic, that is so good. I'd like to thank everybody so much for their time. If we haven't got to anybody's questions, because there's been quite a few coming through, we will send out in our follow-up email that we'll send to the parents, we'll send out answers to some of the questions. But please, I would really encourage you to log online, have a play with Skillsroad, and start thinking about your child's career journey and get them motivated and interested to start their next few steps in life. Thank you so much for your time. Please get onto Skillsroad and see what we've got on offer. Thanks a lot. Have a great night.